Hi, welcome to the desert of the real. Welcome to the second episode of the last DOS games. 5 new lasts today, so let's see if DOS went out with a bang or were these all not worth your time and money. Pył, aka Dust, is a Polish sci-fi first-person shooter. The year is 2798 and we've been colonizing space for centuries. We're here, we're there, we're everywhere. But as we spread more and more, we also spread our culture and way of life. And if you think TV, movies, music, books and paintings, then you're dead wrong. That's what we consume, but our culture, it seems, is based on something entirely different. Veni vidi, conflict. I came, I saw, I sure as hell wanna take it for myself and make sure others get none. And while individual humans can be great, loving, understanding and respectful, whenever we gather up in groups something bad happens and all our worst traits and tendencies seem to surface. So, conflict is what we took with us. But since there's no place for it in prospering and ever-growing empire, it was decided that all disagreements between the factions, nations or organized groups should be solved by means of armed combat on a far-off moon, aptly named the Arena, serving as Empire's peacekeeping program, and whomever refused participation faced total relentless annihilation. Peace through terror has its way of keeping people in line, I suppose. Anyway, as the years progressed and conflicts rose and then were solved on the moon's surface in a bloody combat no less, it eventually turned into a destroyed battleground covered in wrecks and technology of yore, and one that's full of mercenaries, smugglers, thieves and murderers, all seeking powerful or expensive gear and artifacts left behind the numerous wars. You find yourself coincidentally stranded on the arena and must now scrap for artifacts to sell them to survive, all the while seeking Valkyria, an interstellar ship that is said to be there somewhere, still operational and your only means of escape. Armed with just an assault rifle, razor-sharp jaw, impeccable hairline and a will to live, you must venture through 17 levels fighting off different bodies, conserving the ammo where you can and seeking other, better weapons, all to get to the Valkyria and leave the planet. Given the number of enemies, how scarce the ammunition is and the difficulty, Dust is much more of a tactical sneaking shooter than an all-out guns blazing one, which is a nice change of pace for the genre, even if overall it feels very rushed. It's hard to put the finger to the exact things that could use extra time, so I suppose it's a combination of gameplay, presentation and design, and all would benefit from a little more love. Overall, it's not a bad game, but not great one either, and if it was released in English, it could have perhaps gained a bit more traction back then. But it only ever came out in Polish, and it took a while for it to get a translation, so when it eventually did, it was already too little too late to save it. As it stands now, Dust is an interesting last game in an iconic genre on an iconic platform, and even for that alone, it's worth remembering. Wrecking Crew is 1 or 2 player kart racer. And yes, I am aware that there are no karts in it, but please, let me explain. Imagine Mario Kart with all that it entails, so cartoon-like vehicles, funky and Nintendo-centric cast of cute characters and tons upon tons of pickups to find and use to beat your opponents on the way to the finish line. You're still with me? Great. I never doubted the power of your imagination. So, let's start replacing things until we land on the Wrecking Crew. First to drop are the characters and their cars. So all the Princess Peaches, Marios, Goobas, Luigis and the whole Nintendo shebang have to go bye-bye. Instead, we get a cast of weird, bizarre and odd characters in that particular order. A two-headed Siamese twins joined by a single body, Frankenstein out of spare body parts creature from nightmares, old woman with a severe case of arthritis, circus animal trainer / tamer, a random Rasta and many more. Alright. Since we're done with that, let's swap away pickups and power-ups now. While many are similar to those found in Mario Kart, even if different named and looking, few are entirely unique to the Wrecking Crew. Stars for instance. They better your handling, especially on those sharp corners. Repair fixes damage done to your vehicle, teleport instantly moves you ahead on the track, time stop holds your opponents for a few seconds, X2 doubles the damage dealt with your weapons, and keys, when all 4 are collected, they unlock access to secret hidden 5th racing cup. And since I've mentioned weapons already, you can fire left, right, backwards and with specials in all directions. So learning how to best utilize those and which to use when, and also how all power-ups work is a key for success. There are 4 unique track teams in the game: Sydney, New York, Amusement Park and Mediterranean Sea region, and they're all nicely detailed and fun to zoom around on. Wrecking Crew is not the easiest of games when you play it first and may require you to invest a little time to learn it. But as soon as you do and start noticing shortcuts, secret routes and hidden areas, you'll begin winning and eventually will master all of the tracks and conquer numerous cups. Wrecking Crew is an incredibly fun title if you're a fan of the whole crazy arcade karting experience, and especially if you have a friend with you to race against. And while alone it's a fun game for a few races, when played against someone, it can no doubt provide hours of fun. There are two areas Wrecking Crew could improve in though. First would be full real online multiplayer with more than just two players racing against each other. As while it's fun the way it is, just imagine how much more it would be if all cars were driven by real people. And second is the rubber banding, which I hate with the passion of competitive sausage eater. So angrily and with a permanent craving for more. Wins. More wins obviously. When I'm ahead, I wanna stay ahead, and when I'm behind, I wanna fight for the position. Difficulty slider is always a better choice than rubber banding. Wrecking Crew is a unique and fun take on kart racing, and while I've seen and played better, it's fun for what it is, and also a last commercial DOS arcade racer, so if you enjoy this, don't sleep on it. Jonah Lomu Rugby is the last commercial sports game ever to release on DOS. It's also a team sport and rugby, so you know, two things I know literally nothing about. You know how in school, whenever you were playing some team sports against each other at PE, you were always dividing into two teams and team captains then picked their players one by one. Yeah, I was nearly always one of the last few picked. Not because I was out of shape, it's because I was totally indifferent to sports and put no heart in them, so naturally no one believed I could do well. Fair assumption, I suppose, so I just stood there and participated only when I absolutely had to and had no other choice, and did the bare minimum. Oh, to be clear, I'm talking football here, so soccer. If there was no ball anywhere near me, I would not move an inch and just stand there lost in my thoughts, staring with my empty bird-like eyes into depths of nothingness, which as I recall now must have looked weird, but whatever, I didn't care back then, not gonna start now. And if you don't know what I mean, just look any bird in their eyes, they're empty and yet look as if they were looking right through you, straight into the very fabric of reality. Scary stuff. That said, eventually at some point in one of those games one day I was relegated to be a goalkeeper, and despite me being rather short, it turned out I was pretty good at that, with my cat-like reflexes and all. And from that day onward, I was not last or second to last to be picked, but fourth or fifth from the end. Which, you know, was a huge step up, but also meant that I saw much more action, and I didn't appreciate it at all, as it was eating away my private thinking time. Anyway, back to our game, which I've still said nothing about. Well, all that intro was to highlight that I know as much about team sports as I do about interstellar travel, so very little. And I've not played it, so everything I'll tell you about it will be what I read and/or saw online. Jonah Lomu Rugby puts you in control of real rugby union team from the 1995 Rugby World Cup. There are 32 teams to choose from, 16 finalists of the year and 16 that did not pass qualifying campaign. All teams and players included are naturally licensed, and the game is more of an arcade take on the sport than the simulation. There are 4 gameplay modes available: Friendly, World Cup, Tournament, Territories Cup and Classic matches, and as I list them now I realize that it's actually 5, but whatever. And while the first 3 are pretty obvious, the last 2 aren't. So, Territories Cup is basically a league play based on a particular geographic location, and allow for a choice of 5 nations, Tri-Nations, American Cup, Asian Cup or Pacific Cup. These last 3 featuring 3 teams each from their neck of the woods, so to speak. The Classic Matches mode consists of 8 scenarios based on real-life historical World Cup games, which you can join in progress to try to change their outcomes. While rugby may not be the most popular of sports, everyone knows that the title for that goes to competitive apple eating, it still received rather good scores from the professionals and gamers seemed to like it too. So, if you're someone who cares about rugby, this one's a good one. The Last Express is a real-time point-and-click adventure set in 1914, just before the outbreak of the World War. You play as American Dr. Robert Cath, who receives an invitation from a friend to join him on the Orient Express. Without giving it second thought, you accept and get on the train, and with style no less. And I mean it, you're literally jumping on it from your motorcycle, escaping the authorities as a suspect in a murder you did not commit. The story is naturally grossly simplified here for the sake of the video, but that's more or less how it went. If that all wasn't enough trouble already, and your life wasn't plenty action-packed, when you finally get on the train, you find the dead body of that friend of yours. Yes, the one that invited you. So, to escape the suspicion of 2 murders now, you decide to disguise yourself as the dead man, and all that is just the beginning of a roller coaster of treachery, lies, political conspiracies, personal interest, romance and murder, all aboard the titular train. I nearly said Orient Express here. I nearly did. Anyway, even though The Last Express was not a commercial success upon its release, it gained highly positive reviews from both gamers and industry professionals alike, not in small part thanks to its non-linear story and real-time gameplay. While majority of the game is experienced from the first-person perspective, all of the cutscenes are in third-person view and are stylized like some of these very early and jumping between the frames animated movies of yore. The time keeps running constantly in The Last Express and in real time, albeit multiplied by a factor of 6. Many of the events in the game are scripted and run on a schedule too, so you have to keep track of the in-game clock and their on-train locations to be able to witness them as they take place. The game features over 30 individual unique characters, all with their own artificial intelligence and agendas, so when talking to them you have to always keep in mind that they're after their personal goals first and anything else later. So, unless you intervene and change what particular person was about to do, either by having them do something else by changing their mind or just talking to them when they were planning on doing that thing, they will follow their own schedules. And each and seemingly small change in these may have a lasting impact on the rest of the game. This branching design approach made The Last Express a really addictive title, the one that also ended up with over 800 pages long script for. There's 30 quote-unquote bad endings, 4 alternate neutral ones, and a one that's considered a true ending. The game may have not been a commercial success, but it's definitely worth not only your attention, but also a playthrough. Jetfighter Full Burn, the last combat simulation to release on DOS, was a title that dropped during a very transformational period, between the dusk of DOS and dawn of Windows gaming. And as such, it was always on the outskirts of gamers' minds, never reaching the popularity of some other games in the genre. I mean, there are other factors that could contribute to that, but I'm betting on the release date and platform choice to be the main culprit here. Still, it's an interesting light flight combat simulation depicting fictional conflict between NATO and Russia. Norwegian oilfields seem to be the igniting factor in it all, and soon enough the disagreements evolve into a full-fledged war that's as ridiculous and out of place as most of the omnipresent FMV sequences are. It's okay though, story is not very important in a sim, as long as the gameplay is fine, and it is. Fine that is. Full Burn follows a very linear campaign, built out of carefully crafted pre-made missions that can be experienced from both sides of the conflict. Either FA-18 and F-22N on the NATO side, or MiG-42 on the Russian. Some would consider pre-made missions with no option to generate them randomly or dynamic campaign an omission and a mistake in game design, but you have to remember that Full Burn was never made to rival hardcore flight simulations, and its light approach to the realism, physics and flight dynamics, coupled with oh so many cheesy FMVs, made it very approachable but also cringe as hell, to the point that the video sequences reach that magical spot in which they're so bad that they're ironically good and worth experiencing. Especially that it's clear that the devs wanted the game to be the next Top Gun so much. Oh, so much. Like more than you and I wanna win the lottery. And they just failed at everything that it would allow it to reach that elusive level. Well, everything but gameplay, cause think what you want, but I believe that for what it is, if you ignore it not being very realistic, Full Burn's loop can be pretty fun in its simplicity, flying in that sweet spot in which I'm feeling comfortable and not overwhelmed by hundreds of dials, switches and multi-key keyboard controls. Presentation-wise, Jetfighter Full Burn using earlier Jetfighter Freeze engine is pretty terrible. The engine is clearly not up to task and a rapidly aging tech that was rather old even when used with its original game. Still, if you're like me and not getting overhyped about hundreds of keys needed to control the craft and love terribly acted videos in games, then Full Burn may actually be something to spend a little time in. Would I recommend seeing it through to the end? Not really, but I'm not gonna lie. Cheese is what grabbed my interest, and having to play through dozens of hours of missions just to see it all is a bit much even for me. It's clear that the last few games on DOS differed in quality a lot. Some were absolute bangers, some sucked and some sat somewhere in between, in an odd spot between meh and wow. What do you think of today's picks though? Do you think move to Windows was the right call, or should DOS gaming stuck around commercially for a few years more? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below, and maybe share it too, it helps more than you know. If you didn't, then don't naturally. It was fun talking to you as usual, and I'll see you, or more accurately, talk to you very soon.